Good afternoon, morning, etc. to everybody who is here today. And if you could leave me a comment so I know that I'm not speaking into the void to an empty nothingness, I would greatly appreciate it. Last week, or I'm sorry, last session, we had some great comments and y'all were very engaged and you pushed back a little bit when I spent too much time on certain topics. I appreciate that, actually. Uh, but we got one person here. All right. As long as I have one person here, I am good to go. Hi, Sue. I will also say I'm not yet ready to talk about the project, but Sue helped me with the CSS issue I had last session. So thank you very much, Sue. Before we get started, just real quick, last week I spent the week in Santa Clara, California at Google I/O. That was my first time attending that conference, and it is pretty darn cool. And my biggest takeaway is that I went there expecting to hear a lot about Gen AI. They have 2 keynotes, one a 2-hour one, and then, like, a break and an hour and a half ones, and the 2-hour keynote was 100% talking about Gen AI. Like, yep, everything, every single thing was Gen AI. In the second keynote, the hour and a half one, it was like 95% Gen AI. So if you had any doubts that this was here to stay, that this was important, then it's time to get over that. I haven't really talked about Gen AI on this show. I've definitely been talking about it on my blog. I actually have a half written blog post right now about Gen AI. So I'll definitely talk about it sometime here, but that was absolutely the big news, the big topic of conversation um, at Google I/O. And again, not surprising. Um, yeah, yes, indeed. I have no concern about them killing their Gen AI APIs per se. It wouldn't surprise me if some of the things that use it may go away, or if they add it to something, they may take it out. As kind of excited I am about the space in general, it's insane seeing like every single product is getting Gen AI now, and that's probably not a good idea. My toaster does not need Gen AI in like any respect at all. But good conference if you get a chance to go. I believe it's lottery. I am a Google developer expert, which is kind of cool. But that got me in myself. I think outside of that, I believe it's free or it costs money, and there's definitely a lottery. So it may be a little bit hard to get into. I know Microsoft Build is happening right now. I've done that in the past, and I like that conference, but I've not I've been in meetings all morning, so I've had no chance to look at any keynote announcements or anything like that. But I would be willing to bet it's going to be 90 to 100% AI related. And if I'm wrong, I will eat my hat. So that being said, the topic of conversation this week is to finally finish that darn PWA ification of the application that were working on last week. So what I am going to do is go ahead and move my window over there. By the way, whenever you see me doing this, that's what I'm looking for, comments and stuff like that from y'all. And let's switch to sharing my screen. And there we go. So let me actually, it's kind of broken now, but that's all right. Let me load stuff up here. Show you the application. 80 is already in. Oh, I know what it is. Hold on. Let me kill that. Do that. There we go. All right. So the application that we were building was a wrapper for the dad joke API, with the idea being it just shows a dad joke. You hit a button and it loads a new one. And as part of the PWA process, we've done a number of things. The first week was generating that manifest file. And if you remember, and Scott always reminds me to make my font bigger. He hasn't said it yet, so I did it before he could. That manifest file was basically all the information that when the application installs to your desktop or your device screen, all the information about the title, the icons, and stuff like that. So we automated most of that. That was no big deal. Again, as a reminder, that is going to be a link tag. That's line 8 right there. That tells the browser that my manifest is located at so and so location. We did that. The next part was the service worker. And the service worker is a file that is loaded for the web page and can control multiple different aspects of it, but primarily what people use it for is to control network access in support of an offline application. So service workers are kind of special in that anything on your web page, whether it be JavaScript doing a fetch, whether it be an image tag, whether it be anything that does a network request, the service worker can actually sit there and proxy that and do stuff. Again, primary idea for that is to handle an offline system. So we had begun that work, and let me show you where we had started that. App.js was initially just the onload, get a joke for the button, wire up a click handler, on click, go get a new one. That's that get joke function right there. But we also did the work to load our service worker. That is in register service worker, and they scroll down to it, and it's using a browser API to basically register a service worker based on a URL path and passing a scope. So kind of like cookies don't have to be for your entire .com. Cookie can actually be for a sub portion of a domain. Service worker, same thing. It could apply to subpath or the whole thing. Most of us, especially in context of building a PWA, like you're building an app, the service worker scope you'd want for the entire thing. Very important thing. If you are a web developer, and my assumption is that most of you are a web developer, you probably work with localhost or 127.0.0.1 quite a bit. I know I use a command line program to fire up a web server. You could see it right there in my terminal. I actually pointed to that. I realize y'all can't see me point. It has that. So yeah, I'm sorry, brain fart. I'm using localhost. My service worker is bound to localhost or 127.0.0.1. What that means is if I kill this and I go work on some random, completely different web application, and I fire up my, fire up my little web server, that service worker is going to load again because I told it to, hey, you belong to localhost / you belong everywhere. And that could absolutely break things. So I'm going to show you how to fix that with DevTools. We'll open up DevTools real quick. In the application tab and in service workers, I'm going to make that a little bit bigger for y'all. And again, y'all, if that's too small still, let me know. But this is reporting that there is a service worker involved, and there is an unregister button that you could click, and it will kill the kill the service worker. I had to show this comment. Nice shirt, yes, from my buddy Scott. He was in Disney. He picked this up for me. Flynn's Arcade for the win. If you don't know what Flynn's Arcade is, you are missing out on one of the best movies ever. So let me get that back down. And all right, so we had begun that work, and let's actually look at the service worker. Let me minimize, make this a little bit smaller. We don't really need that. All right, so the service worker did a couple of things so far. It has an event listener for the install event. This will be fired automatically for service workers, and it's going to cache my resources, which is just the app manifest, index.html, one CSS, and one JavaScript. If I had multiple images like UI, image like button, whatever, I could just add that. This is all chaining to a function here, add resources to cache, and just working with the caches API. This is built into the browser. It's opening a bucket, and that bucket could be named anything you want, but this is also a great way to handle versioning. So I think typically you'll see like V1, V2, etc. And then basically just caching everything. The second part we had was an event listener for fetch. And basically what it's saying is every single network request, I want you to respond with what's in the cache. Now, this means that we will have an error. And we ran into this error right at the end. Let me just kind of scroll this down a little bit. Don't show that again. All right. So in theory, I'm going to reload. Now, the service worker was loaded. You can actually see service worker installing. It was loaded, but service worker doesn't take effect until the second time, until it's actually properly loaded. So I'm going to reload here, and things are going to go to hell. And then, bam. So what happened is that it tried to hit the dad joke API. It also tried to load one of my assets from the manifest, and it failed. The reason it fails is because our code says every single network request, you are only going to load from the cache. And because I'm not caching the API, I can't cache the API. That's not going to work. That's all right because we were using this great little resource at MDN. I had meant to make a banner for this, but I will share this URL in our shared chat. Comsal like that. All right. This is a great little guide, and it actually kind of walks. It's what I've been using in this tutorial to kind of build the service worker. The next section where we ended up was, what to do if it's not in the cache. And I love their very simple code. Essentially, try to respond from the cache. And if it's not in there, do a network request. So we're going to copy this code and switch to cache, basically cache first. So we'll go in here. Maybe we'll add cache first as a function. And did we just change that? Yep, cache first. So instead of just using the cache API directly, essentially, in this handler, we're instead chaining to a utility method, which is basically saying, if I'm in the cache, use it. Otherwise, do a normal network request. In case you're wondering if this as well could have issues, yes. Yeah, we can get way complex with this. But for right now, in theory, because I didn't cache the dad joke API, this should make it work correctly. And let me go back to my app, reload. And reload again. Hold on. I think I know what. I think I need to update the service worker, reload. And now it's working. Yeah, I will talk about that more later on. But if we go back to console, clear that, reload again. All right. Yes. Cache. Oh, cache is first. Is not. That's not there. Let's save it. Typo. All right. And reload. Oh, I forgot. It's automatically reloading. And my queries limiter cut down. Yep. And it is working. So what we changed was basically only use the cache for my assets. Don't use the cache for API. This will partially help with being offline. And it's probably good enough, but let's actually see what happens when we go offline. And this is going to be great because it's going to hit on something that Sue asked last session. So I am going to go offline in my DevTools and go back to console and reload. And it worked. Let me reload. Let me reload one more time. It should not be working because we are offline. Oh, that is okay. So the reason that I thought it wouldn't work, I knew that the service worker would handle the cache for our HTML, CSS, JavaScript. Um, for the remote API, it should not be able to hit that because I have said, you are offline. But what's interesting is that even though I'm offline, it's still letting the remote API work. And I think I just discovered something interesting, and that is the service worker is kind of bypassing the DevTools. So even though DevTools is telling the browser that we're offline, the service worker, I think, is taking priority and not picking up on that setting. Now, there's a part of me that wants to just reach here and say, I'll yank out my Ethernet cable," but that would probably be bad for the stream, so I won't do that. But that does bring up an interesting problem. Like I wanted to show you this failing because the cache is obviously there, but the API is not there. So let me show, and this goes back to what Sue was asking. False. Okay. So Sue had asked, is there a way to detect if you're offline? There is. You may not be able to see that. Let me make that bigger. There is a navigator variable online that literally points to being online or offline. And right now it's saying false because in DevTools we have set that. If I go back to no throttling, essentially online, and do that again, I get true. There's also an event that you can listen to that will detect that. Now, what I wanted to do was go offline and show you that look, the API doesn't work anymore. But like I said, the service worker seems to be overruling the DevTools setting. If I were to yank out my Ethernet cable, I would definitely be offline. It would absolutely work. So that could be my fault. Could be something I'm doing wrong. But for now, I am just going to say that we're going to pretend to be offline. And I want to get rid of this. Collapse quick view. All right. So I can't show you it breaking it. We're going to have to pretend. And then we're going to have to find a way to handle this API being offline. So the first thing I want to do is just check, see if I'm online or offline, and then we'll figure out what to do next. So that's back in my app.js, and I have a function called getJoke. It does the network requests and it takes the response and return it. So what we're going to do is say if navigator.online, do all that, and and then otherwise, else. For now, heck, we'll just alert offline bozo. And I saved it. It should reload automatically. Why is nothing working for me? Ooh, because I should absolutely be offline. Let's run this one more time. Let's navigator.online. Online. Save it. Go back. Go to my console. And clear this. Reload. Okay. Network is still offline. And oh, yeah. So I know what's going on. I know what's going on. Let me get back to my application, which I can't see anymore. There we go. Um, yeah, I'm uploading. Why is this not working? So I'm not speaking out loud about what I'm struggling with here. So I should. My code is loading my JavaScript from cache. I'm updating my JavaScript. It's not working. I could just go in here and make a whole new bucket. Let's go right here. If I created a new bucket name, it'd make a whole new cache. I don't want to keep editing my code. So what I'm going to do is go in application and clear my cache. Clear site data. That should do it. And in theory now when I reload, cache should be empty. JavaScript should reload. I'll get that new support. And I completely broke it. Inconceivable. Let's go back online. Oh, because I cleared my cache. I don't have a cache anymore. There we go. All right. It does make sense. So I am online. Yep. And my service worker installed. It adds stuff to cache. If I reload again, everything should come from cache. Yep. Yeah. Service worker is active. All right. Now, if I go offline, it's going to work. And by the way, this kind of dance I'm doing with the service worker and updating my JavaScript and stuff. I mentioned last session or the first session on this. It's been like a year or two since I blogged and talked a lot about building PWAs. I remember kind of having to be careful with the service worker during development because it can make things hard when you're updating files all the time, etc. So this is all coming back to me and I'm remembering all of it. It's not that big of a deal. Like, as long as you know, as long as you understand why it's happening, I think it's okay. So I am now offline. And by the way, like I said, there's the navigator.online value. There's also an event listener that I could check to see if that status changed. Now, when I click, great, it recognized it. So at this point, in theory, I have an application that has cached its assets. It's done that. It doesn't cache or try to cache the API because that wouldn't make sense. It's the API is a different service, and it recognizes when it's not going to be able to call the API, and then we have to do something. What we do depends on the application. What makes sense. What I think I'm going to do is create an offline cache of jokes. Now, how big of a cache I create just depends on how much care I want to put into the application. But for right now, we're just going to do, let's say, a couple. So, a couple days ago, I Googled, and let me go back online in DevTools. Never remember if it's per tab or per browser. Um, I'm going to search for, let's go to Google instead of Bing. Come on. GitHub list of dad jokes, just to see if someone has like a repo. And that let's go with this one, jokes.text. So this is from a dad jokes repo, and there are just a bunch of line items for jokes. So I'm gonna make a note of this URL, and I'm gonna go in my code, in app.js. For right now, I'm gonna put it on top. Offline joke credit will be this. And I should check the license and all that, but this is just us kind of testing raw here, testing plain here. And I'm going to take this as a source of offline jokes that we can use. And I'm looking at this and what's with this weird brackety brackety? I guess that's like the answer. But we're going to work on that in a second. I'm going to copy and paste, I don't know, 15 there. We'll see exactly how much. And I'll say let offline jokes equals. There we go. And I love that my browser is letting me know that this is invalid because it's multi-line. We could change that with ES6 string like so. I also see some gremlins in here. I will kind of manually fix those. There's my last one. And another gremlin. Another gremlin. Another gremlin. Another gremlin. And another gremlin. All right. So we now have a set of offline jokes. I actually want to convert this to an array, and I don't think we need this little bracket. We can make that a little bit nicer as well. So let's go into our init. And before we even get our initial jokes, we want to create that offline. We want to make offline jokes be more appropriate for us to be able to use. So I'm going to say offline jokes equals offline jokes. We're going to convert it from a string to an array. This is going to use split. So now I should just have an array of jokes. And I also want to get rid of this little bracket here. And I think the dad joke API just has like a space. So you know what we'll do actually? We'll get fancy. We'll chain this, replace. Is there a replace all? Always forget if I know you can use a regex to replace. So I swore that. Let's go to MDN, replace all. Yep, it is. I'm not sure why Visual Studio Code is not hinting on that, but so we will replace all that with right now just a bracket. So first, get rid of those brackets, convert them to spaces, and then convert the whole thing to an array. So at this point, we have an array of jokes. We have that ready, and then in get joke, we can say, let's just console.log offline jokes, just to make sure it's there. Save it, reload, and come back. And offline bozo. So again, my service worker is caching. I'm going to clear my cache. Feel like there should be a quicker way of doing this. Maybe there is. Clear site data. Make myself online so I can actually get stuff. Reload. Let's go offline and let's see that thing. And yes, so we have 17 of those jokes. So all we need now to do is pick a random one. And that would be, and I'm going to use MDN again, random integer range. I actually have this in a local notebook, so I load it all the time. But MDN has a good example of picking a random number between two values. And their first example, it would be from 0 to 1 minus the max, which happens to work perfect for an array. So I'm going to copy that. I'm going to drop this in here and then say in theory, let joke equals offline jokes and get random arbitrary 0 offline jokes dot length. Whew. So in theory, that gets me one joke. And just to make sure it worked, we'll console log that. And in theory, I could just do this exact same thing. And in fact, I could probably, no, I won't do that. I'm going to drop that right there. And that should do it. So we'll do this little dance again of clearing my cache, going online, and making sure the regular thing works okay. And then we'll go offline, and it should pick result is not defined. Oh, that's because when you copy and paste code, you are bound to make a mistake. There we go. Let me reload. Oh, and anyway, that didn't work. That didn't work. So why did that not? So you know what I'm gonna do? I'm tired of having to reload this. I'm gonna and false. We're always going to be offline when it comes to picking a joke. So we can see this immediately. We will go in the application, clear the cache again, go in the console, go go in the network, go back online. Actually, I could stay online because I'm telling myself to always do the offline one. What's wrong with my logic to pick a random number? Let's first look at what my get random arbitrary is returning. Should be a random number between 0 and the length, so 0 and 17. So clear cache again. This is not getting old, I swear. Reload. Oh, because it wasn't yeah, this I did this error on purpose just to make sure y'all are paying attention. The very next sample, get random integer. So I will take that and I'll just swap that out. And we'll go ahead and get rid of the comment. Don't need that. And get random int. And I'm 100% sure that's going to fix the issue. Save it, reload, clear my cache. This time, for sure, I'm online, console reload, and there we go. Did you hear about the famous Italian chef that recently died? He passed away. And click, 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 click. And this is all coming from offline because remember, I added code there to fake it. Now there's only 10 or 17 or so, and I absolutely could have added this all in. I have more to say about that. I do, but I want to kind of take out my hacks and do a proper test. So we are not going to always be offline. So I'll get rid of that. And I'm going to go ahead and service worker and say, I'll get rid of this console.log as well. Get rid of this console.log. We know things are working, he said, with full confidence. And just make a new bucket and see what happens. And there we go. And I'm going to go in network requests and let's just do fetch. And if I hit load joke, it is not. Let me, oh, I have to unregister the service worker. Thought I was already doing that. Let's update. Try it again. Look at the network. Why am I not seeing the dad joke API? Go in the console. I'm still, okay. We're going to nuke this service worker completely and reload and see if it came in. ICANN has that joke. There we go. We'll filter on fetch. And that is it. Oh, by the way, I filtered on fetch because I wanted to see just the API. But the service worker is also using fetch. So that's why that is showing up right there. And you can see that little gear. One of these things help signify that it's being loaded via the service worker. Yeah. I agree completely. I would absolutely think that's very, very funny. Okay, so we've done this dance. I am going to go offline. So to be clear, the offline support obviously requires you to be online one time so you can get the application and get stuff cached. Um, but in theory, I have my assets cached. I'm not caching the API. If I go offline, it should load all my assets from my local cache, and it should recognize, it should not handle the API because that's remote. It should recognize that I'm offline now, and give me one of my cached jokes, and everything will be right in the world. Go offline and click load joke, and bam. And you're seeing there's no API calls being made. In theory, if I go right back online again, bam, we're seeing API jokes. So, bam, like that actually worked really, really well. Um, and we can actually install this on desktop. It has the icon. Let's see what happens. Install that joke app installed. Uh, I'll make a desktop shortcut. I'm not going to start on device login. That's pretty cool. Turn off dev tools. But now, I'm not sure if y'all can, it's probably kind of small, but my application is running as a separate app in Windows. It has its own icon, uh, and it's like an app window. Um, by the way, Sue, since you helped me with CSS, I would love for you to help me fix this little scroll bar because ideally we would not have a scroll bar. But now I have this, and if my machine goes offline, it is still going to work. Sue asked a great question. Let me let me get rid of this real quick and go back to, let's actually test that out. All right. Why don't you go ahead and fire up that server again and get DevTools out. And that was in application or, oh, bypass for network. That is, aha. Okay. She's asking what this means. So bypass the service worker and load resources from the network. So my understanding is that it's going to say, screw you, service worker. I'm going to do the network. Okay. So in local development, that could be handy uh, because I could add my caching and say not use it. So let's actually test this. So right now I have, first, let me make a change and it won't show up. So index.html, instead of load joke would be load joke exclamation mark, reload. And yeah, it's not showing up because my service worker is being aggressive about caching it. Theory, bypass for network should ignore that. And it did. So Sue, my understanding would be that I can test out adding the cache and using cache, but while I'm developing and I want to temporarily ignore that, uh, that would be a way of handling that. So when I was struggling with, oh, I need to clear that cache and go back and doing all that, what you just pointed out would have probably saved me from doing that. But you would not want to use this when you feel like you're done and this is something that you want to kind of make sure is ready to ship. Does that make sense? I'll use this dramatic pause to take a sip of water. I always suspect like immediate responses, and I forget that like the stream is like 5-10 seconds behind. So I have turned off bypass. I do want to show one more thing. Let's do one more thing. Was update. Oh, hold on. Let me go offline. Something I wanted to show. Go into console. Yeah. I'm not seeing it now, but So one thing, this WebSocket connection, you may be wondering, like, why is there WebSocket Co? He's not doing any WebSocket stuff. I am using a tool called Live Dash Server. I say that. What is my W? Yeah, live server. It is a local command line tool that fires up a web server and it does automatic reload. I have Todd Sharp to thank for showing me that. But if I type code, I hit save, it will force the browser to reload. So that's why you're seeing that there. And that error is because, get back to it. That error is because I told it to be offline and it can't use the WebSocket thing anymore. But in the real world, that WebSocket is not involved in the production application. And hopefully that makes sense. Let's stop being offline and do that. So my whole thing of using an array of cached offline jokes. I didn't have to do that. I could have put a big UI panel and say, sorry, no jokes for you. I could have done that instead. And again, by checking navigator.online, another option would have been to wrap that fetch call with the try catch and see what kind of response I get. Um, Now, I believe if I'm offline, it's not going to throw an error, but the status code at least would say something to the effect. I could do more to check that fetch call. And really, if you're using any third party tool, you should probably be doing that. But this should handle most cases. I just don't have to think about it. Another thing that I could do if I wanted to get more complex, every time the user hits this page, they are going to have to download this block of code, which is probably less than a K, but whatever. They are going to have to parse this, do string manipulation, turn it into an array. I have more options than that. I could actually store it in the browser using something like local storage. Local storage is a key value system that allows you to store data on the user system. I could also use something like IndexedDB, which is a miniature database actually that ships with all browsers. And I could put a million jokes in there. And in fact, I could skip using a remote API at all and literally just ship with a million API, a million jokes, such that if you go offline, that's okay. Or even if even if you are online, just use your own cache for that instead. Uh, there are options for that. Now, if I had a million jokes, I would not have it as a string in here. I would instead, yeah, maybe have on my file system a jokes.txt, and in my init, check to see if I have a cached version of the jokes. If not, do that initial fetch to get the data, parse that giant string, enter my data into the database, and then have the application start up. That would make that first run absolutely a little bit slower. I don't even think even like horribly slow, like maybe 5 seconds at that. It would definitely add that a initial hit of doing stuff, but then after that, it would be even quicker because it's no longer hitting an API to get the joke. Not that it was super slow. Yeah, I'm online. Uh, yeah, it's taking less than a second, but it'd be even quicker if it didn't have to go anywhere at all. So that's about 45 minutes. We have our PWA done, and let me get y'all's opinion. I feel like the topic of the PWA is finished. If y'all want, we can talk about IndexedDB next week, or I'm sorry, next session, and we could get rid of the API and do that idea of, let me try to load up a good chunk of data. I could use this person's GitHub repo and use that, and we can make this application be completely offline supported and default to offline, and just have that. So do not give a joke in the database. Yes. So Sue, I love this question because the whole thought process of what does your application do the first time they're there? What do we do the second time? What do we do when we're offline or online? Thinking about that and making trade-offs, right? Heck, if my plan was to download a database of like a million jokes, right? Um, I could in my JavaScript have something like this. I keep something like this. Keep 10 jokes, right? And if I'm thinking it's going to take about 10 seconds to download that large text file and insert into the database on that first and only, I could only give you like 10 jokes. And you can imagine at first, like, oh, that's funny, 1 or 2 seconds. Oh, that's funny, 1 or 2 seconds. And in that initial usage, you're also at the same time downloading the giant cache. And then just when it's done, stop picking randomly, start picking from the database. So in that case, they don't even notice that you're downloading a lot of it. You should maybe tell them, but they're not even noticing. So that also goes back to the service worker I did where we kind of iterated for them from always to cache, or if not in the cache, do the network. You could also have code in here that tries the network first and then hits the cache as well. That can get you can get really complex about that. Uh, I like thinking about this. So my wife is so good in terms of every time she has a problem with the website, she tells me, yeah, because that's my business. So I hear about this all the time, but like everything she runs into are real issues that developers like tend to gloss over. Uh, but that hits regular people and makes their life harder than it should. And we should be working better. There you go. That's my soapbox. So I got at least 2 votes for talking about IndexedDB. I love talking about IndexedDB. So heck yeah, we'll do that. I definitely want to do Gen AI soon, but I'm gonna do that. I'm gonna do IndexedDB. And one thing I will do. Let me go to my banners real quick. Uh, this code is up on my GitHub repo. Uh, you know what? I was going to say I'll update it afterwards, but why not update it now? Git status, git add. I want everything here. Notes is fine too. Git commit. We did it, baby. And push. So all this code is up on the repo. This is in a folder called PWA1. And what we'll do is to get a good separation of concerns between this session and the next one, we will use PWA2, so we can kind of start fresh. And also, I'm planning on ripping out the API as well. And heck, we'll use that text file. So that's the plan, and that's it. If there is any more, oh yes, I love this. Thank you, Rod. Absolutely, yes, because we're not regular at all. Oh, actually, oh no. So Eric is asking, does it have a time to live? No, it does not, because we just plopped it in cache. Period. We didn't put any kind of timestamp on it at all. I I believe you could do timestamps and stuff like that. I'm not sure how hard it is, but right now it is live forever. Browsers will purge cache data based on various esoteric rules. I think Safari is the most mean about that, whereas like if you've not used the web app for 7 days, it's like screw you, gone, which is pretty bad in my opinion. But right now, the code is basically live forever. And I'm gonna look a bit more into that. Actually, let me add my notes right here. Eric question. I can't type live question. Check caches API for adding a TTL. Boom. Okay, that's it. So let me switch back to this. Let me stop looking at the side and move my dang window over here so I can look at y'all pretty people. And thank you again. It only took 3 sessions, but we have a PWA. And again, all the code is up there on the repo. Thank y'all so much again for the great questions. I really, really appreciate it. And I hope to see you in 2 weeks. Have a great rest of your week, y'all.